The Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab is under mounting pressure to stand aside during an investigation into claims that he bullied staff. It's reported that barrister Adam Tolley is investigating complaints from 24 civil servants into Mr Raab's behaviour. Well, earlier today, anti-Brexit campaigner Gina Miller said the minister bullied her and called her stupid during an encounter in 2016. Now, Rishi Sunak is facing calls to sack his deputy just 5 days after Nadim Sahawi lost his job as Tory chairman, after he was found to have committed a serious breach of the ministerial code. Now, Mr Raab, we should say, denies any wrongdoing. Now, to get more on Dominic Raab and this week's other big issues in politics, I'm joined now by the former Conservative Party MP Neil Parish. Neil, a very good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on this Friday night. So, do you think that Dominic Raab will stay or should he go?
Well, I mean, Dominic Raab has certainly not got a bedside manner. I know him sort of reasonably well. He's very direct and very exacting. So, I mean, Adam Tolley just really needs to get to grips with this inquiry, because what I don't think the Prime Minister can do is allow this to carry on for much longer. Otherwise, Dominic Raab will need to stand down until he's cleared. But, of course, the Prime Minister very much likes to go through due process, and that's what he's doing here. But see, Adam Tolley's been looking at this since November, and I think it's time it came to a crunch. I mean, the thing with Nadim Sahawi is the fact that it was tax, he denied it, and he was proved that he had actually made huge mistakes, and so therefore he'd broken the ministerial code, and the Prime Minister sacked him. The trouble with this one is it appears to be dragging out, and I think this is a real problem for the Prime Minister and the Conservative Party.
OK. Do you think, just going back to last week, do you think the Prime Minister handled that in the correct manner by allowing due process to continue, and then clearly when it was obvious that the ministerial code had been broken, that he acted pretty swiftly? Do you think that was good, or do you think he should have acted earlier?
I mean, I personally would have liked him to act a bit quicker, but I think what he has done is put much store by due process, and that's what he allowed to happen, and then he did act decisively after it. I think the problem he's going to have with Dominic Raab is how much did he know about the bullying, when he became Prime Minister. All of this is becoming a story in itself. The trouble in politics is not altogether whether you're right or wrong, guilty or innocent, is the amount of time it stays as, a top news item, and I think this is the problem that Dominic Raab and the Prime Minister are facing at the moment. Right.
I mean, do you think Dominic Raab should... I've heard lots of reports that he is this tough character. You obviously said so. That doesn't mean he's done anything wrong. You can be tough, you can be straight-talking, and you can be direct. But that doesn't necessarily mean you are a bully. But there have been an awful lot, 24 complaints now. And do you think he can and should survive this?
Well, I mean, I think it does depend, if Adam Tolley comes clearly out to say that bullying in his opinion, did take place, then I think there's no doubt that Dominic Raab will have to leave his position as Deputy Prime Minister. But I think the trouble you've got with this is, I suspect, as far as Dominic Raab is concerned, he believes he didn't bully. Now, he may well have bullied, but I think this is the problem. And I know the character of him, and he is tough, very tough, and he hasn't got a bedside manner, and so therefore, it could well be a problem there. But I think it's not easy to settle once and for all. But I think, the Prime Minister will have to make a decision pretty quickly, I feel.
I mean, tough, though, is not a bad thing necessarily, is it? And tough isn't illegal, tough isn't wrong. I guess it's just how tough has he been and how unpleasant. And do you think in this day and age, things are slightly, easier to blame people for than they may have been 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, in my younger days, I was sort of deputy leader of a district council. In those days, I was pretty tough and dealt with officers, in a pretty tough way. Now, I suspect today I would not be able to do that, nor should I do it. So I think times have changed, and I think there is a case where I think Dominic Raab hasn't really, shall I say, moved exactly with the times, and I think he does need to probably curb his behaviour now. But I suspect he doesn't actually believe he's done bullying, but I think, you know, it'll be for Adam Tolley taking the evidence from the civil servants to come to a conclusion as whether he did or not, because I can't see Dominic actually sort of standing down otherwise.
Is it increasingly hard, Neil, for people to do their jobs as an MP with the intense scrutiny that anyone is under, and how easy it is, in a way, to make a claim against someone that instantly becomes a 24-hour news cycle? Because once it's out there, it's very hard to quash it, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, the thing is, once somebody has made an accusation, it may be true, it may not be, but it covers a huge amount of, it's like phosphorus, it burns very hard and very fast and very hot. And I think that is the trouble. And I think, these accusations may well be true, but if they're not, and some of the ones that are coming around now, some of them may not be, but of course, all of the time, it adds to the pressure. And it is very difficult in politics today, because I think people try to come into politics to make a difference, to make some changes, and if they're too tough about it, perhaps in this environment, I chaired a select committee before I left Parliament, and I had to be careful with one or two individuals on that, work for the select committee, because they were very sensitive, and the trouble is, sometimes if you are too direct, you would upset them, and you don't want to do that, and I think that is the balance, really, that you've got to try and make.
Now, Rishi Sunak, Neil, celebrated 100 days as Prime Minister this week. A GBNews poll out today gave Labour a 24-point lead over the Tories. What have you made of Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister so far?
Well, let's be blunt. Rishi Sunak inherited a pile of poo. There is no doubt about that. And if you see the party itself, the Conservative Party was a sort of a civil war. You'd had the problems with the trust regime and the budget that went wrong, and the run on the pound, and the amount of money the Bank of England had to do to prop up the pound. And all of this he inherited, along with a very divided party. And I actually think in the circumstances he's done okay, and what he's doing is setting out a plan which may not be as ambitious as many would like, but I think what he's worked out is that the Boris Johnson era in particular, Boris was very good at promising the earth but not being able to deliver it, and I think therefore Rishi Sunak will concentrate on trying to perhaps deliver less but actually deliver it. And so in that respect, I watched last night the interview with the Prime Minister, with Piers Morgan, and I thought he came over okay. I also think that with a difficult party, he is pulling it together, and I think the Tory party's got two choices, actually. It either backs Rishi and gets on with it and pulls the government round, and then perhaps a fight to the next general election, and it may not be a completely foregone conclusion that Labour will hammer the Conservatives, but unless they do, and unless Rishi can keep going in a reasonable way, then it will be disastrous the next election. And there's no doubt that the health service, cost of living, energy, all of those things are hugely important. And of course, the trouble with the previous Conservative chairman Zahawi was that it was so wrong, where you have people struggling to make a living, and somebody doesn't know whether they should have paid 29 million tax and a £5 million fine in the end. That was very bad. So I think all of these things Rishi's had to deal with, and I think so far so good in a very, very difficult place. As I said, a pile of poo. There's no two ways about it.
And that sadly is the truth, isn't it?
I could have said something slightly different to that, but I was trying to be polite tonight.
No, don't bother. Look, just say it as it is, please. You mentioned Boris being able to promise a lot, but maybe not delivering. Look, on Tuesday, we marked the 3-year anniversary of the UK leaving the EU. A lot was offered, and I have to say, an awful lot of people are probably thinking not an awful lot seems to have happened. What does the government need to do to make Brexit a success? And maybe, because I know you voted originally to remain, and then obviously once the due democratic process had come and the vote came in, you went, right, let's get on with it and try and make the best of it. I have to say that's exactly my thinking as well. The people voted, so let's crack on with it. But we haven't seen all the brilliance, we haven't seen all the benefits that we were promised yet. Are we going to?
Yeah, because what we were promised was a lot of less bureaucracy, but most businesses trying to export and import from Europe have actually found more bureaucracy since. And so, therefore, that's got to be ironed out. And you see, I think what we haven't done is we need to replace, some of the European trade that we've lost with international deals. The trade with Australia and New Zealand helps a bit, but it's about 0.7% of GDP. It's a help, but it won't kick in for some time. So, my view is that sort the deal out with Europe, sort the Northern Ireland Protocol out, and make sure we keep as much trade with Europe, and then build these international trade deals. You see, some in the Conservative Party are almost hell-bent on saying, we don't want Europe at all. Well, we've still got nearly half our trade with Europe, so it's very, very important. So, let's not have any more debates about Brexit or not Brexit. We've Brexited. But what we haven't done is delivered very well on getting that extra trade with Brexit, because you see the GDP for our averages, we're below G10, aren't we, in all of aspects, and this is what we've got to do. Now, we've had COVID, we've had a lot of people staying, back, haven't gone back to work, lots of other things, so it's very cloudy to blame it all on Brexit, and I'm not going to. But Brexit hasn't helped. I think we can make it a lot better, and I think, Jacob Rees-Mogg is looking into regulation. For goodness sake, if one of the, I was fighting the campaign to remain, and I was told by George Eustace and Owen Paterson and others that it'll all be a wonderful world, and when we leave the EU there'll be no more bureaucracy. Well, I think if you talk to most businesses, most people, you'll find there's more bureaucracy. So for goodness sake, get on and sort it out. That's what I would say to them.
It's been 9 months, Neil, since you stepped down as an MP, and you're talking a lot of common sense tonight. Have you missed, though, the madness of the House of Commons, and would you like to get back into frontline politics, or have you had enough of it?
I missed what I really enjoyed was chairing the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. I'm a farmer. I understood it. I'm a practical man, and I held the ministers to account, and I really enjoyed it. But some of the parts of Parliament I didn't enjoy as much. Yeah, I am minded to have another go. I made a very stupid mistake. I resigned. I did what I believed to be the right thing. But I think hopefully there can be forgiveness. And I would like people to forgive me for my stupid mistakes. And I would like to really, because I still have a lot to offer, food, environment, agriculture. I also believe in fair distribution of food. I did a lot with getting food out, helping to get food out to poorer people. All of these things are very important, cost of living crisis, all these things. So there's still a lot burning inside me that I would like to, and of course I was brought up a Methodist. I'm a non-conformist, so I am minded for once to have a go as an independent and see how it went, because home rule for Somerset, home rule for Devon, I can see that as a really good idea, and we'll even do a little deal with the Cornish if we have to. I'm only joking, but like I said, but coming from the West Country, and you can tell by the accent, that part of me has always wanted a little bit of a go as an independent. I was always pretty independent in Parliament. I had a reputation for that. So let's see where it takes me, really.
Well, it's been lovely having you on. I really appreciate your honest and frank views on everything. It's so nice that when people are out of politics, they can suddenly put their sensible hat on and actually have a proper debate about things. But Neil, pleasure. I wish you a very nice weekend. Thanks for being on. Thank you.
Thank you for the interview. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.